Hi, everybody. Welcome back to tonight's episode of the Second Chance Queen podcast. I'm Christiana Mrjenovic, your host, otherwise known as the Second Chance Queen. And tonight we're going to be speaking with Lindsay Gutierrez, who is Miss Achievement USA 2025. Originally from Midwest City, Oklahoma, Lindsay Gutierrez dual resides in Georgia and Maryland with her active duty Air Force husband, Anthony, and many fur babies. She's a United States Air Force veteran. She was awarded the Air Force Achievement Medal and earned several unit and wing level accolades for her service. During a deployment in 2014, Lindsay was involved in a vehicle accident that left her with an undiagnosed traumatic brain injury. After her honorable discharge in 2016, Lindsay struggled to find employment, going almost 3 years without a career. It wasn't until she was diagnosed with a TBI years after separation that Lindsay understood how mental health impacts so many veterans. It was through the military and personal experiences that Lindsay was able to find her why as a social advocate. After she separated from the military, Lindsay became involved in pageantry to bring awareness to veteran needs and issues. She was inspired to help veterans utilize various resources to get back into the workforce, take advantage of their veteran benefits, and use their service beyond the uniform for meaningful societal change. Lindsay competed in and won her first pageant ever, Ms. Veteran America, in 2017. In addition to Ms. Veteran America, Lindsay has held numerous state and national titles, and she is the reigning Ms. Achievement USA. Lindsay's advocacy efforts have been formally recognized through proclamations by former Georgia Governor Nathan Deal and the Georgia House of Representatives. Lindsay holds a Master of Arts in Human Relations from the University of Oklahoma and a Master of Social Work degree from Arizona State University. She works for the Department of Defense within the security sector and is pursuing her doctorate of social work from the University of Louisville. She is an active volunteer in her community and loves the outdoors. Furthermore, Lindsay is an ambassador for various living organ donor foundations. Lindsay altruistically donated her kidney to a fellow veteran on May 25, 2022, and 40% of her liver on April 30th, 2024, to an anonymous recipient. Sharing her donation experiences not only brings awareness to the need of living donors, but helps to close the wait time gap for recipients on the transplant list so more lives can be saved. She is focusing her doctoral studies on health equity in the organ donation community. Please join me in welcoming Lindsay Gutierrez. Welcome on to the Second Chance Queen podcast. I am so excited to have you. So if you want to start by telling us your most memorable second chance that you've given or received, that would be perfect.
So the most memorable gift I have given as a second chance to someone was whenever I donated my kidney and my liver. So I have done that twice. It has been a really memorable experience going through both of those life-saving procedures. And so I donated my left kidney in May 2022, and then I donated 40% of my liver in April of 2024. So I have had a chance to give a second chance to two different people on two different occasions.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for doing that, first of all. And it is so refreshing to hear of a second chance given, because so many times I'm talking on this podcast and I love all of them, but there's a lot of stories about receiving second chances and you don't often get to hear about the chances that have been given. So it's really exciting to have you on and just showcase that type of second chance, because that is such a huge one that you don't hear about as much.
It's not really that out there, but it's common, but not in a sense where we kind of think as a norm, kind of that standard of everybody knows this information. Yeah. So I think a lot of people are familiar with organ donation just in general. We check the box on our driver's license, but there's more to it than that. And people can take that second step to be a living donor. And so that's what I did. And it was an incredible experience. I had the opportunity to meet the recipient of my kidney. I don't know who the recipient is of my liver. They're still anonymous, but I'm content and I'm happy knowing that they are out there thriving, because this chance was all that they had, or else their chances were up. They had nothing else that they could fall back on. So this was it. And knowing that is enough for me.
That's amazing. And I didn't even know, and neither did my husband, actually. This prompted a conversation with us because we didn't know that you could donate part of your liver to somebody else as a living donor. He was like, can't you just do kidneys as a living donor? And I'm like, I don't know. We're going to find out. So That's awesome. It's good. And I think it's so important to bring awareness to that too.
Absolutely. And you can donate your liver, as we have learned. I donated 40% of mine. It's a very different process than kidney just because the doctors are taking sections. And so they will go through a huge procedure to make sure that you're a viable donor. So I have had more testing done on myself and more than I thought I would ever find out about who I am internally through both donations, but it's even more intricate when it comes to liver donation. And so the doctors really don't know how much they're going to be taking until they are literally having you completely opened up on the table, and they use their machines and all the things that they do to really graph and make it precise to make that incision. And so there's just so much more because with the kidney, you're taking the whole kidney. You're not just taking a part of it. With the liver, you're taking the part, and now you have to think about all the other minuscule things that go into that. And your liver does grow back. And so there's a rapid regeneration process that happens within the 2 weeks of the doctors performing the donation surgery. And I personally didn't feel my liver growing back, but I could feel the process. So I was extremely hungry. I was very tired. I was eating everything, but then I was feeling bloated at the same time. So I had all these things going on, and my husband was very confused about what he needed to do to support me. And I was like, I don't know either. My body's trying to tell me all these things, and everything is true all at once, and I don't know how to make this make sense for me. So we're just taking it one step at a time. But it's a really, really incredible process, and I love educating people on it because it is such an important component of organ transplant that is just not as widely known.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we had no idea, and it is vastly interesting. What prompted you to want to donate organs while you're alive?
Good question. I do get that a lot because so many people tell me, I don't know if I could do that. Well, I feel that because I didn't know that I could either or that I even wanted to. And it wasn't until I was competing in a pageant a few years ago and a fellow delegate was going through a really traumatic situation with a friend of hers that was needing I can't remember which organ, it was either kidney or liver, but they were needing a transplant, and that was the last step in their process before dying, unfortunately. And that's the reality that we have to talk about, the hard truths of these situations, that most people are either too late or that's it. They have nothing else past dialysis. And with liver, there is nothing. The medications are that's it. So this conversation between her and I really prompted something, and it planted the seed within my soul. And it wasn't until about January of that following year, so of 22, is whenever I saw an ad for donor outreach for veterans. And it's a specific nonprofit organization that connects veterans in need of a kidney to potential donors. And so that spoke to me because I'm a veteran myself of the Air Force, and I wanted to make sure that whoever I was giving to, I opted for a veteran this time around. And I just went through the process of learning, and I was learning as I was going through what these steps looked like for donation. And my husband was learning along the way too, and so was my family. And once my husband realized how impactful this was going to be, he was completely on board.
Oh, that's really sweet. And husbands, they deserve all the
Mm-hmm.
kudos in the world, especially
Oh,
pageant
yeah.
husbands. I think they're on a
Yeah,
new level.
totally.
Pageant husbands go through the
Yes,
ringer.
absolutely.
So that's amazing. That's really awesome. And I love that you got to support kind of two things that you cared about with veterans, and then also connecting that to pageantry. I think the sisterhood in pageantry and the way pageantry can completely change your life trajectory is something that not a lot of people realize. So it's really cool to hear those connections and how things can change for somebody based off of
Absolutely.
that.
I never would have thought that now this is my platform in pageantry, and it's given me a purpose. It's actually amplified my education now, going for my doctorate in social work. So I'm looking at health equity within the organ donation space. So that one moment of interaction and conversation with somebody has led to now years of being a social advocate for organ donors.
That's amazing. That is really hats off to you, because it takes a lot to be a living donor, I'm sure. There's a lot of sacrifice. You've done a lot of sacrifice being a veteran, first of all. So that's not something that's lost
No.
to you. But then, losing part of your body in a, you know, literal and
Yeah.
figurative way. Um, that's a huge sacrifice. So thank you for that. And I love the education that you're doing towards that because it prompted a conversation in my household. And I'm sure there will be other listeners that maybe didn't know this was a possibility that might look into that too. So that's a really great thing that you're doing, bringing awareness to
I
that
hope so.
subject.
I hope so. And that's what it takes is just having these conversations and dialogue. And as a social worker, it just is one of those things that you really do need to just talk about it and educate others. And that's where the change starts, is just you and I having this conversation and then it making a ripple effect with listeners. And you just never know who's going to be impacted
Yeah.
that needs to hear this message, because there's somebody out there who's impacted by kidney disease or liver disease or pancreas or needs a heart transplant. There's all these different situations that are going on that somebody is connected to. And this might be exactly what they need to hear to understand more
Yeah.
about organ donation and to realize it can be complex, but it can't be either at the same time. There's so much that we can discuss,
Yeah.
and we can make it easy to understand. And that education is a really critical component to that.
Definitely, 100%. I agree. And I love raising awareness for different platforms and causes. So that's super exciting. And I love hearing of giving second chances. Would you say, was there any influence to your mental health through the donation process? Your confidence, your mental health? Was there any sort of impact to you as the donor?
Definitely so. And I really like to touch on this because it's also not something that is widely known either, because you do go through kind of a grieving, a mourning process to some extent. Maybe some people don't, and I would love to believe that there's a lot of people who do not, and I hope that that's the case. The reality is that there are a demographic of people who do, and the best way that I can kind of make that connection is like a postpartum depression. And whenever I donated my
Okay.
kidney, I could feel this vacant space on my left side. And so here I was, my body was getting back to its new normal now, just working with one kidney. I was doing what I could as far as getting up and walking and trying to physically get myself back. And so there was a lot that my body wasn't able to do that it was very familiar with. And so I realized I couldn't push myself like I was before. I had to give myself that grace and that
Oh,
space to heal mentally and physically. And so I did go through a period where I was essentially in a postpartum state of depression. And I didn't realize that's kind of what it was like. And I don't have children myself, but whenever I was telling my social worker and therapist about this, during my checkups and everything, they're like, yeah, that is essentially what this is. It's a grieving period that your body is going through because you've lost something and your body knows that you have.
yeah.
And so I had that talk and I brought it up, and I was scared to talk about it because you go through a huge rigorous process for donation in general. And you do talk to therapists and a psychologist and everybody else that you can think of. You talk to these people to get cleared. And so I thought, well, now how does that make
Yeah.
me feel? How does that make me look? But I brought it up, and I had the courage and the honesty to say, yeah, this is what's going on. And I received the help that I needed. I got that care, and that was huge, especially transitioning now 2 years later into this space. And so I felt like my head and my heart were in a completely different area this time, and I was prepared for that.
That's really important. And I relate as a mom of 3 to the postpartum depression portion because I experienced it unfortunately with 2 of my 3 children. So I relate to that feeling of loss, and you can feel good about something and also feel bad about something at the same time. It has that impact. So that's a huge thing that I think future donors should be aware of, and it's important that you're bringing that portion out into the open as well. Was there any difficulty accepting your new body and coming to terms with the changes that you experienced physically because of
Oh
the
yes,
organ
yes,
donation?
definitely. And I think it's very similar after you give birth too. You have this new body that you're working with, and it's not the same as it was before. You have these scars or these stretches or something inside that you can feel. There's just so many different changes, and that's still what my body is going through right now. And so I have a massive scar on my belly. I have scars internally. I have the scars that have faded but are still there from my kidney donation. I still have a lot of sensitivity, not so much bloating, but that was there before early on. I also have a lot of just internal trauma that my body is recovering from because they made this massive incision twice. And so it's just inflamed and I'm trying to figure out how do I get past this? I know we're creeping on 7 months here, but that's still your body takes a while to heal and it just needs that time. And
Yeah.
so I have parts of me that I still can't feel because my nerve endings are just not grown back yet. It's a work in progress for right now.
That's amazing. I mean, there's so much more to it than
Mm-hmm.
people realize. So that's massive. And I talk about confidence and, body positivity because that's a huge part of my platform. But also, I think the self-care
Mm-hmm.
portion of it is really important, especially when you're going through a process like that. So I'd love to know what your favorite version of self-care
I have
is.
learned that appreciating what I have done is a form of self care and recognizing that my body is
Yep.
not going to be the same as it was before. And I'm proud of that. So I might still have the little pouch and that's okay because it's not going to go away because that's where the scar tissue is. There's these new changes that I have learned to embrace and I'm not going to have the model body that I think we have that stereotype of. And I'm happy with
Yeah.
that because I know that this is what my body has gone through. And I love seeing the different scars that we all carry because they have a story that shows what you have done. What did you go through? How did you battle past this and how are you recovering? What does that healing journey look like for you? And some of it's all a work in progress. I don't think that we ever fully get to that 100%. And I love that we have these conversations and knowing that body positivity is a huge part of that self-care. I also love being able to get out and going to the gym. I'm getting a routine back for myself because my routine has been completely disrupted. And so just knowing,
Yeah.
hey, maybe tonight I just want to binge out on some cookies or something, and I'm okay with that. I don't need to just beat myself up over something. I don't need to just sit here and constantly count my macros like I was doing before. I'm loosening up and I'm embracing and accepting that. And I love where I'm gonna find myself later on as well because I would love to show that here's the different periods of transition and I would love to eventually get on a stage of doing a physique contest and showing off my scars and how this is different than some of the other competitors on stage because they don't have the same kind of story that I do. You're going to visibly able to see my huge scar and realize that there's something that has happened. So I might not have the same kind of physique that somebody else does, but I have a story because it gave a second chance to two people.
I love that. And first of all, there's two parts that I love to that. The first one is that you mentioned self care in a way that you don't often hear. I always joke and say on a lot of episodes that bubble baths are like my go to self care because that is a huge part of my self care. But you mentioned a mental version of self care and it was
Mm-hmm.
accepting and, coming to terms with. And that is huge because so many times we think of self care as eating the cookies or going to the gym or bubble baths, but self care is mental as well. It's resting, it's acknowledging, it's accepting. So that's a huge thing. And I also love that you're embracing your scars and that you are wanting to show those off because as a mom that has plenty of tiger stripes now and jiggles in places where she didn't used to jiggle, I love getting on stage and showing my curves. And I've worn a swimsuit, a couple months postpartum on a national stage, and that is terrifying. So hearing of another queen that's like, I want to get up there and
Yep.
show my scars, I love you for that.
It shows normalcy. We're just normal human
Yeah.
beings. We're normalizing what real bodies look like, and every real body is a body
Yep.
that is an individual person. That's a real body.
Yes, and the stories that each body carries. I think people, focus on the perfection
Mhm.
with bodies instead of the stories, like you hinted and mentioned. And I love that. That's such a positive and powerful way to think of our bodies as more of that canvas of what we've been through in our life and how we've contributed to society and the world. And so that is profound. And I absolutely love
Thank you.
that.
Thank you. I love hearing your stories
You're
too, just about
welcome.
how it makes
Thanks.
me feel validated in knowing that some of these things that was feeling and thinking are very equivalent to somebody else who has a different story, but we're very similar in so many different
Yeah.
ways. I love that connection that we're able to make.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love that you're able to connect to others by recognizing what other women have gone through. Even though you may not have experienced that postpartum, being able to relate and connect is powerful. And it's a great validation and understanding for both. So I love that. And I think what you've been through is just as hard as, I mean, essentially, you are a mother in a way, because as mothers, this little creature takes over our body and then we give birth to it and we
Correct.
give life. And you gave life through your body to two other human
Yeah,
beings.
that's a good
So that is amazing.
Yes, yes, that is so true. That
It's
is true. And
true.
I really do feel like that my body knows that it was missing something. It was, and that's what
Yeah.
triggered a lot of those different changes early on. And then the second time around, it recognized, okay, we've done this before. And so now we
Yeah.
can handle it a little bit different. Still different in this aspect, but we know how to move forward when these things occur. So that was neat. That was neat seeing the difference and how these surgeries were.
And that is very accurate to motherhood as well, because I can tell you with each of my children, my body knew what it was doing faster and faster. So it's amazing that the human
It
body can do
really
that.
it's incredible. It is an incredible thing that we have, just us in general as people, and what we can do with our
Yeah,
bodies.
I love that. What would you recommend if a donor said to you, I'm, freshly out of surgery, my confidence is kind of distorted right now. What advice would you give for a new donor that's kind of learning to live in their new body?
I would really turn the question around and ask them, what was your why? Why did you give? And really go from there, because I want them to remember why they went through this process. We also have to be acknowledging in the fact that there are these challenges. And so validating those feelings, um, giving value to what they did, and saying it's two things can be true at once. You can be very frustrated with your
Yeah.
body and very proud of what you have done. We don't have to just be one thing. We can experience all these different changes at once. And so I would really encourage them to remember their purpose for giving in the first place, because that's never going to change, as far as the fact that you help save somebody's life. Somebody is now walking this earth because of the gift that you gave that can never be taken away. And this is causing additional things to occur within their family. So now somebody has their mother or their
Yeah.
father back, and their aunt, their uncle. They're able to do these events that they've never done before. So keep that image in your mind of what these people are now able to do, because they have their second chance back. And I really think that that helps put things into perspective, because that's a lot of what I looked at. And whenever I would have these tough moments, was I did this. Yeah, it sucks getting out of bed whenever you can't move. And I would sit there and complain to my husband, like, why did I do this? Why did I do this? This was a terrible idea. Those words came out of my mouth. And then he was like, Bug, remember, you saved somebody's life. This is a temporary feeling for you going through these experiences. What they have gone through has probably been something that they've gone through their entire life. And they would have died had it not been for what you did. I was like, yeah, you're right. You're right. That's just me being me in my feels, but it's true. It's true. You just really have to embrace those moments.
That is a great perspective. And I think it really kind of puts things into perspective, the way he kind of centered you
Mm-hmm.
and brought you back to that, because there's there's not as much. It's easy to get into our own feelings and think like, oh, this sucks at the moment. I mean, when I got out of bed after having my kids, I was like, why did I do this to my husband? So I relate. But but then, recentering and realizing what you've given is really powerful. And I didn't even really grasp the effect of you giving someone their relative back. I mean, that is a huge contribution to the world, is that someone would not be here today, or two people technically wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for what you've given. So that's amazing that you're able to give that. And if you could say to these people right now, I'm going to make it kind of fun. If you could say, okay, you've got my kidney, you've got my liver, I wish for you to do this one thing with your second chance, what would you want to make sure that they did?
I would want them to cross something off their bucket list that they never thought that they were going to be able to do at the time that they were undergoing dialysis or these different treatments, whatever that looked like for them at their time, at their worst moment. What was it that was preventing them from doing that thing? So it was definitely not having a functioning liver or kidney. But now that you have both of those, yeah, I want you to go out and do something extreme for you. And it could be something, whatever that looks like to them. But just to enjoy it to the fullest, and realize that these feelings that we have whenever we go and explore and take on these adventures, and we scare the crap out of ourselves, but we were like, oh my God, it was just a rush. I want them to be able to feel that.
That's amazing. That is such a fun feeling too. And the thought that these people might not have gotten that. So that's a great perspective to have. If you had someone that was interested in organ donation and they wanted to look into this process, where would you recommend they started?
So the first step is to think about, where would you want to donate? A lot of people are going to look local, but maybe some of the hospitals around you don't have that as an option, because not every place has a transplant center. So that would be the first thing, is recognizing where's going to be the closest transplant center for me. The other thing is, you can go through some different organizations, and I don't want to just promote one, but there's several different organ donations out there that you can reach out to, just doing Google searches and inquiring and saying, I would like to be an organ donor. And that's where that might start for them as well. It's just the inquiry. So you have two different routes really that you can go. So for the hospital route, that's where you don't have to have anybody in mind, but you can. So you can be an altruistic donor, which is what I was. Or if you know somebody that needs that particular organ that you're willing to donate, you can go through that connection as well. But the hospital or the organization that you work with, they're going to set all of that up for you as far as who it's going to be if you go through altruistically. So there's a whole process that goes into that. But it's really just saying, hey, maybe I want to get some education. Could I potentially donate? Would I be a good candidate because of XYZ? So it just gives them a chance to ask all these questions. But yeah, just having that thought, hey, maybe this is for me. I want to check it out. And you have up until like literally you're on the table. I was sitting on the table ready to be put under with anesthesia, and the doctors were asking me, is this something that you still want to do? And I said yes. So you have that chance at any step of the process to say, you know what, maybe this isn't for me right now. So you can choose to reverse that decision, and they're going to fully support you no matter what your choice is.
That's a great kind of peace of mind to have, I think, for anybody, because I'm sure it takes a lot of mental strength from the time you find out you're going to be a donor to when you get to that table. What was the most difficult part of that process for you?
Probably just waiting for the surgery, just the anticipation of, I have no idea what this is going to look like, or what's going to happen, or is everything going to work out okay? Could something go wrong? So there's a lot of what ifs, but if I continue to play those what ifs in my mind, I would never be where I'm at. You just have to take a risk. And I received a lot of, well, I don't think I could do that, because what if so-and-so in my family needs it? Well, that's a good point, but there's no guarantee that you're a match to them either. So there's all these things to consider. Is that, again, how often do you have kidney disease or liver disease in your family? And mine, we don't have any. So there was a low risk for that. There's the what if of, well, what if I needed a kidney? Because that's come up before too. The good news is that for altruistic donors, you go to the top of the transplant list if something like that happens. So there's a ton of contingencies and there's an answer for everything. So I would give people that peace of mind of whatever question you have going through your mind, it's been in somebody else's mind too. And we're able to provide that support.
Love that. Now, are kidneys and liver the only two living organ donations that you can do, or are there additional
So there's
donations?
a few others. So of course there's blood, which I know it's not a type of organ donation, but is a very important component to donation because during these surgeries you're losing a lot of blood, and so that has to be replenished. So that's really, really important, and I want to be able to stress to people you can do that too. Even if it's not an organ, you can still donate blood, and it's going to make an impact. And then you have bone marrow as well, and so bone marrow is something else that people can donate that a lot of us, including myself, I didn't think was part of that category, but it is. It's part of the donation option. And so those are the main ones. I believe even now some hospitals are looking into uterine transplants, especially for women who can't conceive because they've had their own health issues. And so they're being able to take the donated uterus from a living donor to put it into the woman who was wanting it to be able to have their own children. So that's really, really special that we're making these advancements in technology and science as well. And then there's also an option, which I haven't looked into this very much, but I believe that there's also a potential for living donors to give a lobe of their lung. And I believe, and I don't know all the process, but I think it helps create a lung for the potential recipient. So you're not taking all of your lung because we need that ourselves to be able to breathe. But those are the main ones that you can do while you are alive. And then everything else is once you become an angel donor.
That is amazing. I had no idea about so many of those options. That is a lot to look into. And it's the thing that I can also think of that that just popped in my head is a friend of mine's undergoing the process of donating eggs so that, for women. So I think that's really cool as well. And in that realm of organ donation, I mean, it's not an organ, but it's a very cool process. And I just love talking to women like yourself and like her that are going through this experience because it's very selfless. It's a very, very selfless thing to do. And so my heart goes out to both of you because being able to give life and potentially give babies, that is so powerful. I feel like that would just make you feel so powerful.
Because you're giving life either way. So it's through the organ or through the eggs, because you're either giving somebody that opportunity to have children that otherwise wouldn't with these viable eggs. And then you're giving that second chance to somebody whose life would have ended had it not been for the donation. So it's a circle of life going on here.
It is. That is so great. I absolutely love that. If you could name an honorary second chance queen, so no one can take my title, but if we were going to name a celebrity or anybody, who would pop in your head as an honorary second chance
so queen? I'm going to go out with celebrity on this one. So Selena Gomez, because she is a kidney donor as well. So I love that she did that for her friend. And I don't think that she gets the attention. And I know none of us do it for the attention, but I feel like that this is such a huge thing that could solve the kidney shortage problem that we have worldwide. And really specifically here in America, there's 100,000 people on the transplant list, and less than 600 people come forward yearly to be able to donate. And and then of that, so if you have 100 people that are at a hospital saying I want to donate, only about 2 of those people actually get through as a donor. So the statistics aren't high for donation. And so being able to do that living is giving additional life and quality of life to somebody. So it's really special to see that somebody like Selena Gomez did that. And I would love to see her as a second chance queen.
I love that. I love her. So that is so exciting.
Yeah, she's great. Yep,
She's great.
she
I
is.
love that. Absolutely. So you're already the national title holder for your
I
title,
am. Yep,
correct?
Ms. Achievement USA.
Do you have any other dream titles that you haven't acquired yet?
Ooh, yes, I've always wanted to do a universe type pageant. So I think that would be really fun to do because it incorporates additional categories as well. And so then you're just really
Yeah,
amplifying and taking it to the next level.
I love that. That's a great organization, and I feel like that's like every
Yeah,
little girl's, goal. When you
right?
think of pageantry, you're like, I want to be
Yes,
there
yes,
one
something on a
day.
universe level. That would be so cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. If is there any final message that you have, or a lasting kind of legacy statement that you want to leave? If Lindsay was leaving a statement to be known by, what would you want to say to the
My
listeners?
favorite quote is be the change you want to see in the world. And we really can do that. And it takes action though. So words are hollow if we're not doing anything to show those,
Yeah,
and we have the ability to make all the change possible. And I think it takes this communication and connection with each other, and working together. We can't do it alone, so I encourage people to support their friends and their family and the different things that they're doing, because again, you're making these connections with people that you just never know who needs to hear these messages.
I love that. Well, I want to say thank you so much again for your contribution to the other lives that you've impacted. Being a dual living organ donor is absolutely incredible. So, thank you for doing that and spreading the message to the world, and also for being a veteran and bringing awareness to that portion as well, because I think women veterans especially are
Oh,
powerhouses. You guys are a subset of women that I just admire so much, because everything that goes into being a veteran as a woman is incredibly powerful. So thank you for both being an organ donor and for being a
thank you so
veteran.
much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you for raising awareness for not only just the organ donation portion, but the mental health portion, and being so candid about the things that you went through. Because I think the openness and the communication about those topics as well may help other organ donors not feel so stigmatized. They may not want to talk about those things because you're doing something that's so selfless, and then, you can have those negative kind of feelings. And I think that's something that's probably not talked about a lot, because they expect it to be all sunshine and
Oh yeah.
rainbows. And you are totally valid in experiencing those emotions and going through that. So thank you for talking so candid and openly about that, because I think that could really help
Just
people
want
going
people to know
through
you're
that.
never alone. You're not alone ever.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you so much for taking the time tonight to do this interview with me. I am so excited to get your message out there and to let everyone know what you're up to.
So you can follow me on Instagram at Linds_Gutierrez. And then I'm at Ms. Achievement USA on Facebook, and I will definitely provide those links so everybody can connect to either one.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining tonight's episode of the Second Chance Queen podcast with Lindsay Gutierrez. She is an absolutely amazing woman, a veteran, a living organ donor times two, and she is contributing so much to the world. So thank you for getting to hear our conversation tonight, and I will catch you on the next episode of the Second Chance Queen podcast. I'm Christiana Marjanovic, and remember, you always have a second chance. You just have to be willing to take it, or to give it in this case.